Hi, I'm Patrick Dunnican. At Gibbons, we believe that citizens need to be informed about the complex issues that affect their lives. That's why we're proud to support the programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C. St. Joseph's Health, a passion for healing. It's what's inside us. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Valley Bank. NJM Insurance Group. New Jersey Resources. And by International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. Promotional support provided by Insider NJ and by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association.
Welcome to State Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio in Newark, New Jersey. We are honored to have the Honorable Attorney General in the great state of New Jersey, Gurbir Grewal. Good to see you, Attorney General.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Did you always, when you were growing up as a kid, by the way, where was that?
Jersey City. I was born in Jersey City in Hudson, grew up in Bergen and Essex.
Did you say to yourself, I want to be the Attorney General?
No, I think I wanted to be a tennis player or an athlete.
Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, I played high school tennis competitively, and I always thought I'd be an athlete, but somehow stumbled into law school.
You have a background in law enforcement. You are the first Sikh American to be Attorney General of the state, which means what to you and the rest of us?
Well, I mean, it's an extraordinary responsibility. It's a great responsibility to be the Attorney General in the first place, to be the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, but I think it's an added responsibility to be the first in anything. To be the first Sikh in this position, I think my mistakes are magnified because they reflect not just on me, but broadly speaking on the Sikh community. And then my successes are magnified. If I do this well, I think it benefits the entire Sikh community, which is a new immigrant community relatively in the United States. And so if I can do it well, I can encourage others too.
You know, it's interesting. There's a whole bunch of issues I want to talk about. The opioid crisis, dealing with gun control issues, environmental protection, immigration, et cetera. But I want to get this one out of the way.
Okay.
You've been asked a million times. You know where I'm going, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, the radio thing.
Ah.
So there's two characters on 101.5.
Yep.
I don't even know their names, and it doesn't matter. So they think they're being funny, and they make reference to you, and they don't even call you by your name, but they say the guy with, quote, the turban and
right.
whatever else.
And then they sang Turban Man.
I didn't even know that part.
Yeah.
That speaks for itself
in
terms of who they are and how they see their role as folks in the media, and everything's supposed to be funny. I still don't get the joke. You handled it with class and dignity and just forgave them very quickly once they apologized because?
This is part of life for me, Steve. I have dealt with much worse than two radio hosts calling me Turban Man. I've developed thick skin over the years, just growing up, looking the way I do, believing the way I do. So for me, I need to get back to work. I need to focus on being the Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the Chief Legal Officer for this state. But I'll tell you, what bothered me about those two hosts was not how it affected me. What bothered me is that they said that as long as I wore my turban, it wasn't worth remembering my name. That they reduce me, and by extension everyone who shares my faith, to the most visible aspect of our identity. And I think in this moment right now that we're living in, we have to be very careful, those of us with platforms in the media or in government, with the words we use, the words we choose, because we don't know who needs that slight push to go over the edge and to do something violent with somebody, or to say it's okay to act out on these types of beliefs. Because when I was the Bergen County prosecutor, I dealt with this type of stuff, and it was on the chat boards and on the comment sections of the
hate stuff.
Yeah, the hate stuff.
How do you know when it tips over to someone taking words, because words matter, and now they're violent?
Well, I mean, I think we all just need to be more responsible, because we're seeing it across the country, right? I never thought in my lifetime I'd see people, white supremacists, protesting at a college campus, yelling, "Jews will not replace us," and carrying torches, and then running over a protester and killing her. So I think in this moment, we just need to be responsible. You don't know when it could push that person over the edge, when it could lead to conduct. And so that was my concern with that radio situation.
Harder on this. I'm sorry for interrupting. I promise I'll do the opioid stuff.
That's fine. I'm here.
Yes, you're the chief law enforcement officer in this state, but to what degree do you worry about, think about, and are concerned about the tone and the tenor of what is being said literally at the highest office, singular, in our country out of the White House? And what does that have to do with the conversation we're having right now?
I think it starts from the top, right? I think responsibility has to start from the top, that if we've got to set the tone as people with platforms. And I think when the highest office in our land, the person occupying that seat is pitting communities against each other, stripping people of their humanity, likening them to cockroaches and dehumanizing them to such an extent, it gives other people license to say, you know, maybe it's okay, because I see it happening at the top levels of our government.
The president says, I'm a nationalist, that means what to you? He says, I'm just being a patriot. You interpret it how?
I interpret it as legitimizing these folks, you know, who view nationalism as the equivalent of you know, white supremacy and these beliefs that are just bigoted and just antithetical to everything we stand for as Americans.
Okay. So the governor appoints you. It gives you this portfolio, this mandate to deal with a whole range of issues. Ready to go through some?
Yeah, let's do it.
The opioid crisis. What is the role of the Attorney General's office dealing with a health issue like this?
Yeah, I mean, it is a public health issue, but unfortunately, law enforcement is at the front lines of dealing with this crisis. I started off as a federal prosecutor at the U.S. Attorney's Office right down the street here, and I never dealt with the drug crisis from this perspective. We put away large-scale heroin dealers and organized conspiracies to import large-scale quantities of drugs. When I became the Bergen County prosecutor, they gave me a phone, and I would get every overdose in the county. I would get every Narcan save in the county, every fatal overdose in the county. And so it became very real for me that this was a law enforcement issue, because it's our cops running to homes to try to catch somebody before they overdosed fatally, to revive them with Narcan, with naloxone. And it was us that, you know, as law enforcement, that were in this cycle of arrest, overdose, Narcan save, trying to run to that next fatality before it happened. And so as Attorney General, when you have oversight over 30,000+ law enforcement officers, I think it's incumbent on us to sort of shift the conversation, that it's not an entirely locking up people with a disease. It's trying to get them the help that they need. And that's what we've tried to do at the Attorney General's office by pushing people, low-level drug offenders, into treatment options. We have innovative programs, and we're starting to see some progress, and law enforcement has bought into this.
Attorney General, by the way, can we put up the Attorney General's office website so people can find out about, not just about you, but about some of the initiatives that you and your team are involved in? The whole DACA thing fascinates me, the whole question of immigration, particularly in light of the conversation we just were having.
Right.
Okay. So there are 15 other state attorneys general that are suing the Trump administration for what, as it relates to this?
So we're trying to stand up for our residents.
Explain what DACA means to those who don't know what the acronym means.
You know, DACA is a federal program that was stood up during the Obama administration. It's deferred action for childhood arrivals. These are kids who came in here at a very young age through no fault of their own, who grew up here, who have gone to school. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, they're working with us, they're in our society. And so the program allowed them to come out of the shadows, you know, have some normalcy in their lives and not fear deportation, and have some protection to be able to go to school and to thrive and to, you know, experience some part of the American dream.
So what's the attack on the federal government in this?
So this administration has decided that it wants no part of defending DACA, a program that was stood up by the prior administration. So what we've seen, there have been a number of cases out there, but I'll give you one example. There was a case in Texas recently where 6 Republican attorneys general sought the repeal of the DACA program. Since we were not involved as parties in any of the other DACA litigation, we went down to Texas and we intervened in that case. We said, because the federal government, which was being sued by these Republican attorneys general, won't stand up to defend this program, we will, because 17,000 New Jerseyans who are DACA recipients are affected by this. And we want them to not go back into the shadows, but we want to protect them so they could continue to live their lives as they have been over the last number of years. And so we won a temporary reprieve in that case in Texas.
Let's try this. Real quick, Officer drilling. Again, so many of these items fall into the category of the Attorney General's office, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why? We just had the head of the DEP here, the Department of Environmental Protection. What do you have to do with it?
So
Offshore drilling.
So the way it works is we're the chief legal officer. The DEP commissioner can't bring lawsuits on her own. We have all the lawyers of the state at the Attorney General's office. And so we work in concert with the commissioners, with Commissioner McCabe, in figuring out whether policy coming out of Washington or being curtailed by Washington affects New Jersey. And that's the number one decision point for us, right? There's a lot of sensationalism in the media about what we're doing at the AG's office, that we're reflexively anti-Trump. That's not the case.
You're anti-what, though?
We have two questions. Is the policy out of D.C. affecting New Jersey, right? And if it's affecting New Jersey and it's unconstitutional, that's the second question, or unlawful, then we'll stand up. If it's not affecting New Jersey and it's lawful, then we're not getting involved. In this case, offshore drilling, the Secretary of the Interior, Zinke, gave Florida a pass. We have 100+ miles of coastline here that we need to protect.
What's at risk?
Our livelihood, the resources of our shoreline, the economy, the jobs at the shore. If you have offshore drilling, all of that could be negatively impacted. But here's the thing, Steve. Florida got a pass. Why did Florida get a pass? And why didn't New Jersey get a pass? And so we sued the administration to find out. We sent a FOIA request to say, hey, what conversations did you have with Florida? And why did they get exempted from this offshore drilling program? And why can't New Jersey avail itself to the same benefits as Florida?
I'm curious about this one, too. The whole SALT deductions, state and local taxes.
Right.
So if you live in New Jersey, you probably know this. So the Trump administration, Republicans in Congress, supported the idea of, look, 10 grand, that's it, across the nation. Your state income tax, your property tax, you put them together. Historically, we could deduct them. 10 grand, that's the cap. In New Jersey, let's just say, for many, that does not cover even close to the whole question of what we pay in state and local property taxes. Trump administration argues, and I'm not going to ask you to argue tax policy. Right. It's not what you're here for. But they'll say, wait a minute, the tax deal that we cut helps middle-class folks. Now, all of a sudden, you're involved in this and saying that you think this is what, unconstitutional, illegal?
That's right.
Because everything has to be a legal question for the AG's office to be involved. What's illegal about the administration saying we're going to cap it at 10 grand, your deductions?
Well, it's unconstitutional, Steve. It violates the 16th Amendment and the 10th Amendment.
How so? Explain this to us.
Before there was a revenue code, there was always a provision.
I mean the IRS revenue code.
Right. Before there was, a federal income tax, going before the codes. Before there was a federal income tax, we always had the ability to make these deductions at the local level. And for them to take away this deduction also takes money out of our state coffers, too. Our state should have the ability to also raise revenues through taxes to pay for the essential services here. And now, if we're not allowing this deduction, there's less money for the states to now use for the benefit of the states.
You think it's punitive?
That's a 10th Amendment violation, and it is punitive because the conversations that were uncovered when this was being considered, when the SALT deduction was being considered, in addition to the unconstitutionality of it, right, because it's always been there. There was conversations with Mnuchin and others at the federal level.
Mnuchin and Treasury Mnuchin.
Right.
There were Mnuchin.
Right. There were conversations where they said, back and forth, not my words, theirs, that this was to penalize blue states.
You don't really believe that. You don't believe that the Trump administration and the leaders in the Trump administration having to do with fiscal policy said, let's pick the states that voted Democrat, let's stick it to them and give them the shaft when it comes to tax policy because they have high property taxes and they pay more income tax. You really believe that?
It's not whether I believe it or not. It's what they said in the conversations that were taking place, in the record that we've been able to develop. The case is pending in the Southern District of New York. This is what the conversation was in the background, that let's give it to the blue states.
But respectfully, in the end, doesn't the IRS decide on this and not the courts?
Well, it's the courts will decide right now. There's a case pending in the Southern District of New York. The federal government filed their motion to dismiss. Our response is due, and there'll be an argument.
Give me 30 seconds on gun control.
So it's about gun safety.
By the way, every time we do a program, we're doing it right before Thanksgiving, we just pray there's not another horrific incident involving guns and violence and killing.
Right. For my role as chief law enforcement officer, it's about public safety. It's about law enforcement safety. So the bills that have been put forward by the Murphy administration, by this legislature, that give me the tools to go after gun traffickers and straw purchasers, that give me the tools to to go after those who are making these ghost guns or selling the parts for these ghost guns or 3D.
Define ghost guns?
Ghost guns are these partially completed guns. They're manufacturers who advertise on the internet. We've sent them cease and desist letters. They sent partially completed assault weapons, and then they'll send you a link to YouTube on how to assemble them. They don't have a serial number. They don't have a way for us to trace it, and that makes it difficult for if we recover them in gun crimes for us to trace them for law enforcement. But it puts guns in the hands of people without background checks. And so those tools are what we need as law enforcement officers to ensure public safety and law enforcement safety in this day and age.
By the way, Steve Adubato here. We're talking to the Attorney General of New Jersey, Gurbir Grewal. I'm curious about this. The other question of community policing, the whole question of relations. We did a whole series. If you want to look on our website, our team will put it up right now at steveadubato.org. Check out a series of programs we did on police-minority relations. What is the role of the Attorney General's office in trying to improve relationships between police and the minority community?
That's something that's very close to me. It's something that I think I could facilitate as Attorney General. Let me just say this. I would like to spend my time on fighting violent crime, fighting the opioid crisis, which we talked about, and improving police-community relations. I'm distracted by stuff coming out of Washington, and I need to stand up for New Jersey in those cases. In police-community relations, there are divides between law enforcement and community all across the state and all across this country. And what we've done at the Attorney General's office is bring people together. We had our 21 county prosecutors hold 4 quarterly meetings this year on different topics ranging from how we investigate officer-involved shootings to bias offenses to immigration issues to the opioid crisis. Those are 4 community meetings in each county, and they're supposed to seed a conversation because it's easier to have a conversation in a church basement than by a yellow police tape. And if we could have that understanding and get to know each other in a peaceful setting, when there is an unfortunate situation, I'm hopeful that there's trust between law enforcement and community, so law enforcement can do their jobs and community could have confidence in law enforcement.
Got about a minute left. Real quick, legalizing marijuana going to happen in the state?
That's down the street from me. That's the legislature.
That's not your area?
That's the legislature and the governor. If that's where they go, we'll be prepared to enforce the laws as they write them.
One more quick one. Our team has been involved with one of the entities in your office, the Office of the Insurance Fraud, trying to make people aware of insurance fraud. Still a high priority?
High priority.
What is it?
Insurance fraud can be anything from schemes to submit false claims to Medicaid fraud to even bad doctors who are selling scripts. I mean, they're defrauding the insurance system. So there's a whole range of issues. Traditionally, it was in the auto industry, but now we're seeing it everywhere. It's any sort of submittal of a false claim to an insurance company, and it's really organized, and it's costing taxpayers money.
Attorney General, I want to thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And, let's make sure we continue the conversation as the challenges continue, not just for your office, but for everyone in the state. And we wish you all the best.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Stay right there. Yeah. This is State of Affairs. I'm Steve Adubato. He's the Attorney General, and we'll be right back right after this.
To see more State of Affairs with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at stateofaffairsnj.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD. And follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We're pleased to be joined by the mayor of the great city of Paterson, Andre Sayegh. Good to see you, Mayor.
Thank you, Steve, and I like the way you emphasize great when you were announcing that I'm from
Is it? Come
Paterson.
on. First of all, you're walking around with the pin that says, I love Paterson. Make the case, why is it a great city?
Well, we're the home of the Great Falls. We've got great food, and I believe we have a great future. Think about our history. We're the first planned industrial city in the country, founded by Alexander Hamilton. I very often say it's where Hamilton set the stage, a little play on the Broadway musical that's popularized the first Secretary of the Treasury. And I feel like because we have the diversity, we have our history, and we have the geography. We're not too far out from New York City. We can leverage those assets and ultimately make Paterson great.
Paterson's got 72 ethnic groups.
We do.
You are,
You've done your homework.
You are the first Arab.
I am.
As a mayor.
I am.
Why is that significant?
Well, immigrants came to Paterson looking for work. Like I stated before, we are a hub for industry. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that. But my mother came from Syria, Aleppo, which was hard hit by the war. My father's Lebanese, hard hit by another war in a different decade. So hardworking immigrants just wanted both, well, I have a brother. They wanted the two of us to excel in education and ultimately become responsible American citizens. Above everything, productive.
What's the biggest, and let me put it this way. Is crime the #1 issue in town?
Public safety is, because if you want a stronger city, you have to have a safer city. And we've been able to reduce crime through public policy. We implemented the commercial curfew ordinance, which regulates hours of operation for establishments that are in Paterson's hotspots.
Yeah.
And we've reduced crime by over 70% in those areas. There's 18 different sections of the city that fall under the jurisdiction of this legislation.
Is it hard to bring in economic development, bring in people to put their money into Paterson while in fact they're going, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This looks dangerous.
Yeah. So other areas have happened. Newark's happening.
Yep.
Jersey City's happened. Paterson is about to happen. There's a tremendous level of interest from investors. We meet with big-time real estate developers almost every day, my economic development director and I, and we're promoting the fact that Paterson's a place where you can invest, see a return on your investment, and is a safe place, because we're emphasizing the fact that crime is our #1 priority.
Let's talk education.
Sure.
The role of the state in Paterson right now does not exist, or does it?
It still exists. We're transitioning. We've been under state control since 1991.
Right.
So we're at a point within the next 2 years, we'll wrest control from Trenton and we'll determine our future and our fate.
But respectfully, Mayor, to play devil's advocate, one of the reasons, the biggest reason the state took over, the state said, hey, Paterson can't take care of its public schools. We have to come in because the state constitution of 47 said the state's ultimately responsible if a municipal government or if a school district can't handle it.
I'm glad
That's what happened.
I'm glad you cited 47, thorough and efficient education.
It's in the Constitution.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, at one point, Paterson became a patronage pit, and the fiscal
Otherwise
picture,
known as a lot of the jobs in town were going to the Board of Education, going to local schools, as opposed to focusing on the kids?
Correct. Unqualified individuals, and who suffers? Yes, the children in the classroom.
But does the mayor have a lot of influence over a situation like that? If you have a superintendent imposed by the state has control, you're the mayor. What does that have to do with schools?
Right, and as a matter of fact, there was a question on the ballot last week that said, would you prefer an appointed school board by the mayor or an elected school board?
What do you like?
Well, selfishly, of course, I'd like an appointed school.
So you'd want to appoint those school board members in your communities so that they're accountable to whom? You or the kids?
Look, I think it worked in New York City with Michael Bloomberg. He took over and essentially he refashioned the school board. I personally would prefer to do that, but how about if there's another mayor that doesn't necessarily hold education as high as far as a priority is concerned? So I actually voted against it.
Is that true?
I want to preserve democracy.
Okay.
And it was overwhelming. It was 7-1. It was defeated 7-1.
Got it. Let me ask you this. Governor Murphy, his urban agenda and its impact on Paterson, describe it.
All right. So Governor Murphy and I have a terrific relationship. And I've told him we want to write a success story in this city. And Governor, you're going to be a co-author. There's no question.
Define what that means.
As far as
great prose. What does it mean in terms of implementation?
We have 100. I like you're good, Steve. You brought your A game today.
They haven't thrown me out yet at public television. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're almost as hot as Eli last night. So
now I was after a giant win. Trust me, this is on tape, so there'll be a lot of losses after that. Go ahead. Pick it up.
$130 million in state tax credits. We have 3 catalytic projects, one at the Great Falls, one downtown, and one in South Paterson, which is an ethnic enclave. It's Arab, it's Turkish. I call it the Halal Meatpacking District. So we're going to leverage those tax credits. We're working with the EDA, Tim Sullivan. We're making sure
Economic Development Authority.
Correct. So we're working closely with them. The governor, over a month ago, unveiled his economic development plan. I was there.
Big on innovation.
Correct.
What does that mean in Paterson?
Okay, what does it mean in Paterson? I'm one of the 40 mayors around the world participating in the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative. And we're emphasizing innovation. We're emphasizing data. We're emphasizing that Paterson can become a smart city if we do everything right, which leads me to opportunity zones.
Right, opportunity zones, the federal good initiative.
Yes.
Okay, so is Paterson one of the opportunity zones?
We have 8 census tracts.
8? Okay, you got 8
You're impressed with
opportunities to get federal dollars into Paterson on these tracks to do what?
All right, so we're going to incentivize investment. Let's say, for instance, you're interested in one of these 8 census tracts. There's an extended period of time where you don't pay capital gains taxes so that you
get a break, as long as you're employing people.
That's correct. So we want to incentivize investment in distressed cities. That's the terminology they use. In fact, I'm heading down to the League of Municipalities in Atlantic City. That's the first session I'm going to attend because my economic development director, my chief of staff, and I know that the opportunity zones could potentially unleash the economic engine or revive the economic engine in Paterson.
Before I let you go, have you always had this level of energy?
I had 2 cups of coffee this morning.
Did you have the NJTV coffee? It's
I did.
awesome.
It is incredible. I got to admit, that's why I'm going to come back. I love you, but I'm going to come back for your coffee.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. I'm optimistic. I'm enthusiastic about Paterson. It's the only home I've ever known. It's where I brought my wife over. She's a transplant. She's a Brooklynite. We're raising our 3 children here.
That's beautiful.
So I want to make sure that Paterson is the next frontier and people know that. And I'm the cheerleader in chief for the city.
Clearly you are. Mayor, make sure you come back and keep us
I will.
updated on how things move forward. You have an open invitation here at State
Thank
of
you,
Affairs.
Steve. This
Thanks so much.
went very well. And before I go, it's only customary. If I love Paterson, I know you do too.
I love this. Now, I'm
you,
born
sir.
and raised in Newark, but I will just show that up there. Do I have to disclose this to Public Television Standards and Practice in the Legal Department? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
Stay right
Appreciate
there.
it. Thank you.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by the law firm of Gibbons, P.C., St. Joseph's Health, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Valley Bank, NJM Insurance Group, New Jersey Resources, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825. And by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State. And by Employers Association of New Jersey.
NJM Insurance Company has been serving New Jersey policyholders for more than 100 years. But just who are NJM's policyholders? They're the men and women who teach our children, the public sector employees who maintain our infrastructure, the workers who craft our manufactured goods, and New Jersey's next generation of leaders, the people who make our state a great place to call home. NJM, we've got New Jersey covered.